Hey there, everybody. So I would like to provide a video how-to, a demonstration model of what I would like you to be doing for building your lesson plans this week. So I'm doing this live on the fly. There may be a few errors along the way, so pardon those in advance. But let me show you what I'd like you to try to achieve this week. Remembering that, first of all, we are dealing with newcomers, so less is more in many respects. We really have time to just dwell on a lot of the simplicities, all right? So last class, I had the opportunity to show you the basic structure of the lesson plan, which was something that you would download from your page here. Right, downloading the green lesson template. And then I also showed you a sample lesson plan that was a slight variation, all right? And I said that you could copy and paste many of the elements from this into this. All right, so the first thing I am going to do is I am going to rename this as Book 1. Okay, because I'm dealing with Book 1. And the book that I am working with is called Waking Up. That is Book 1. So I am going to put the title of that book right here. Now, the nice thing about the newcomer program from your perspective is that these language objectives are pretty much static. They're dialed in for very, very novice learners, both in terms of the language that they know, but also presuming an emergent literacy level as well. And the way I've been working with this series has been very much targeted to one learner who does not know how to write at all in fourth grade. We spent September learning how to write his name. He has a fellow student who does know how to read and write, and then we recently had another student join us who also knows how to read and write, but essentially the English language is brand spanking new to them, and the way that their knowledge of print and how that print matches the English language and all of its sounds and all of its grammar is also new to them. So there is a lot to be learned, and so we are going to be co-teaching language and literacy, but our mandate as ESL teachers is to make sure that the language thing happens absolutely. We don't dive into literacy, skipping over the language piece. We have to make sure that the language piece is there. So this is the book that we're working with. And here's my sample lesson plan that I had. You'll notice that the way I had written these objectives on one page there's a slight variation, right? That's because the demo model that I was working with came from when I was working with the Blue system. Okay, so I'm just going to compare these real quick, and knowing what I know about my target learners, I'm going to do a little bit of copy and paste. Okay, and I encourage you to do this the same. We already did this in class, but if you want to know exactly what to copy and what to leave out, you're welcome to review that here. All right, so read the pages out loud, echoing the teacher. Follow along with your finger when the text is read out loud. All right, that's the reading objective. Read the pages of the text out loud independently or by repeating the teacher model. Follow along with the finger when the text is read out loud. Okay, so they are saying the exact same thing. All right, and there's enough flexibility in this language objective for a slightly more advanced learner who wants to take their own initiative, but also for a learner who really needs some very basic scaffolding. So let's move on to the writing objective. Writing objective for Book 1, write the words and sentences in response to the dictation of the text. Complete sentence gaps with missing vocabulary, and that's what we called a close before, right? And so that is basically the same thing. Okay, so there's not much I need to change. From a speaking perspective, there is a little bit of variation. All right, so one, I had echoing the teacher or recalling vocabulary verbally. I like that. I absolutely like that for my absolute beginner students. Can they hear the sounds coming from my mouth and actually mimic them? Okay, and I'm reminding yourself that mimicking is not the same as language production. Okay, anybody can listen to something and repeat it. Anybody can listen to a bird and whistle in the same pattern, right? So that is not necessarily language use. That sits in contrast to this existing language objective, which is to retell the text by looking only at the picture. That would be aspirational for me, and maybe my one student who's more advanced would be able to do that. But I also want to include a more basic language objective, which is just echoing, or maybe even recalling vocabulary verbally when I prompt it. Okay? So between these two objectives for speaking, that kind of covers, my 3 students for now. Okay, listening objective. So I don't have anything here in my model plan, so I'm going to just borrow right now because I kind of liked what I did the other day. All right, my listening objective is match the spoken descriptions of pictures in the text with the corresponding image by pointing to it in response to spoken and written prompts. All right, so this is where I'm going to be saying things like find the X. Where is the picture of the chicken? Where is the word that says chicken? Okay. And I know from experience with this particular group, who I think are fairly representative, that this is the way to go. Okay. New constructions objective. All right. Demonstrate an emergent knowledge of the meanings, spelling, and pronunciation of the following words. All right. Now here is where we are going to look in the text right now. And I am going to look at the rooster and waking up. So I'm going to have wake up, or even wakes up, because that's how it's written. All right. So maybe I'm actually going to do it that way, just because it actually reflects the text. And then I have the word rooster, cow, pig, horse, turkey, sheep, duck, chick, all right, and there's also the word and. Okay, and I know that there's this word the. Okay, right, we see the word the there. That's a grammatical feature, and at the moment I want to help kids get an orientation to content words primarily. All right. And is much more useful in a discourse situation. All right. And so I'll include it, but it's not going to be like this driving priority of mine. I would rather that everybody knows how to show their understanding of and even remember how to say something like wakes up, rooster, cow, pig, horse, turkey. And I'm going to engage in some kind of language activity somewhere later in the lesson that is going to ask them to match the word, either printed or spoken, with the image. All right. And what I actually ended up doing was having this page open, and I would say the word horse, and the kids pointed to the word horse. And then I said the word rooster, and the kids pointed to the word rooster. Then I said the word pig, right? So that was my activity where I would say, they would point. And then we flipped it. I would point, and they would say pig. I would point, and they would say sheep. I would point, and they would say turkey. Okay? And we would just go through it. And then I would pantomime Dr. Hall wakes up, right? And we would all act out wakes up, and they would say their name. Okay? So that's what we would be getting at with these a way to get at these new constructions and helping them map, helping them just demonstrate emergent knowledge of the meanings of, right? That's really helping them map these things of new mappings, the meanings of blah, 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 right? So that's what I'm going for in this lesson. And I am working with a very simple text, okay? So I'm also going to think a little bit ahead on what my learners are going to need and me to like navigate, okay? So a language of schooling, map. Students will be able to map front cover, back cover, turn to page, all right? I'm a big fan of not only having like single words, but also phrases and sentence stems, okay, as part of vocabulary items. Map and demonstrate understanding of, okay? And that's going to be my limited goal today. Like that's the language of schooling that I am good. Can they follow directions for me as a teacher? Also look at the, and also point to the, okay? And if you are working, by lesson 3, these kids will have this down, so it doesn't need to exist in subsequent lessons, right? But I know that that's what I'm going to be doing, okay? In a later lesson, so maybe in lesson 2, I might, instead of mapping, I'm actually going to be rehearsing it. So I might repeat all of this verbiage, but I'm going to say students will rehearse, right, this stuff, okay? All right, so lesson materials. What do I need? I need my book. I also need paper because I'm going to have them practice writing and recalling. I'm not going to get to vocabulary journals quite yet. I need my whiteboard because that's what I'm doing. I'm writing stuff on the whiteboard. There is no review or extension of the previous lesson because this is book number 1. So I'm not going to put anything here, all right? But if I did, it would be stuff like everything in the next lesson is going to be some variation of basically this, okay? So when I get to lesson 2, I'm going to be looking back at book 1 content, and we are going to be reviewing this. And it could take 2 minutes, it could take 5 minutes, all right? Depends on the flow, okay? Usually if I've gotten a good amount of repetition on the first day lesson, then when I come to day 2, which should be the day after, right? We don't really want it to go like next week. I don't want a week interval. I don't even want 3-day intervals, which is, really problematic for some places of scheduling, right? You want to get to them every single day, at least for a block of time, like 2 weeks, 3 weeks before you. It's better to work with groups in blocks, all right? Okay, so basically, the next lesson, I would do all of this stuff, but it's, all right, so it's, that's what I'll be pasting into lesson 2. I know this is lesson 1, okay? All right, so it's there. I'm not going to actually use it for this lesson because there isn't a previous lesson. Same deal. I'm not actually going to use this for a lesson because I don't have previous words. So, and the same here. There's no previous lesson and there's no previous lesson. But all of this stuff is going to be filled out in lesson 2 with stuff from The Rooster Wakes Up. Okay? All right, so activate prior knowledge. Oh, that's another thing I want to do. Picture of a farm. Okay, so what I want to do quickly is show picture of a farm. Ask students to name the place in their language. Say what they see. Okay, I'm all the time, I'm asking kids, how do you say this in your language? This thing, right? It's a great way for me to learn language, but it's also a way for me to show that their home language is welcome in the learning space, right? And it's just a way for them to participate necessarily without having the elements of English. Now we do a picture walkthrough, and that's pretty much straightforward, all right? There's nothing to it. We page by page look at the picture. What do you see? All right. And the way I had it here, actually, I could copy all of that and we could paste it right here. All right. This is basically the procedure I would do. Okay. Show a picture of what's our first picture, right? It's on page, we could do the cover. So picture of the rooster, then the, cow, etc. You can put it in shorthand. All right. But this is also an opportunity for them to talk about like, oh, where's the chicken? The chicken is in the grass, right? And so, right, the cow is in the grass. And what else do we see in the picture? Oh, we see the sun, right? And so anytime the students notice something about the picture, I put all that stuff up on the whiteboard. So I'm going to just say, elicit and write on the boards, rooster, cow, all the animals, ... grass, sun, what else do we see? More grass and more sun. That's it. It's pretty close. Maybe the word feathers, that might come up. And again, these are beginners, and so I am only going to push these finer detail words if the students express an interest in learning them, all right? That is to say, they need to show that they have bandwidth for it, all right? But grass and sun, that's pretty ubiquitous. So everybody needs to know grass and everybody needs to know sun. I'll push feathers if I kind of feel like they have the bandwidth for it. Okay? And the same thing with egg, right? And even, a cracked egg. So if I have a more advanced learner that has the bandwidth to kind of pick up that word, I might include it. Okay? You really have to kind of know your students, all right? Then, after we've had a chance to deal with that, all right. So under the preview key vocabulary, I have been building this vocabulary on the whiteboard in this little step right up here. Okay. As we do a picture walkthrough, so it's just a matter of students repeat pronunciation of words written on the whiteboard. Okay, and this repetition is kind of important. I'm doing it within a couple minutes of elicitation, so it's just an opportunity for them to hear the sounds of the word again and perhaps recall the meaning. All right. So there have been 2 encounters, or at least to start, one encounter when we do the picture walkthrough, where this is the first time they are hearing the new word and they're seeing me write it on the board, and there's a picture to match it so that the meaning and the written form and the spoken form have all landed in the same time and visual space and auditory space for the learner. Okay, then I might do a quick repetition of the words on the whiteboard without the pictures, or I may just go straight to reading the text. Okay, so actually reading the text. All right. This you can just copy and paste because this is exactly what I do. All right. This is the lesson plan. Teacher reads the whole text in a measured but natural manner and gives learners uninterrupted exposure to the sounds of English and how it relates to print. Students should follow word for word with their finger or a pencil. I actually find the eraser of a pencil. Pencil, eraser, erasure. Yeah. Just some kind of stylish or something. All right. Because I'm finding like otherwise they mark up the book with their pencils. Not great. Okay. But as I said before, we're trying to verify that the kids are listening and making connections between the sounds and the text. All right. So you can just copy and paste this verbatim. And I'm going to make sure that my font is the same. I like Times New Roman. All right. So, comprehension questions. Well, we just read the text page by page. They had an opportunity to, for the now third time, hear the verbal and spoken forms matched with a picture. Again, but now in the context of sentence, the rooster wakes up, the cow wakes up. Okay, so now we're starting to connect it to grammar. Okay. Comprehension questions. This is where I turn to page, what page was it? Page 16. Ask students to point to the animals when I ask, where is the? Okay. So in fact, this is another piece of teacher talk that I realized that if I'm going to be asking it, I need to include it. And I think it's important to acknowledge that it's hard to kind of stick to it, to a single formula like where is the or point to the. Okay. So what I might end up doing, then repeat the activity and say point to the. Okay. Okay, and then a third activity is going to be I probably wouldn't do any comprehension questions beyond this on day one because they're kind of this is plenty. But at some point, probably by book 10, maybe 12 or 15, I might start asking WH questions. Okay, like who wakes up or what wakes up. The rooster wakes up. Okay. But I won't do this on day one. There's definitely books later where the sentence structure is extremely simple. It's like this, right? And I start asking who wakes up, right? And then I turn the page and I say, who wakes up? And they might say the duck, right? And then I ask again, who wakes up, right? And keeping in mind that these two pages are facing each other, okay? All right, and they say the word turkey, and then I say, can you point to the word turkey, okay? Ask students to point to the printed word when you say it, okay? So in this case, at a very basic level, this is what I'm asking students to do. I'm not going to do much more than that on day one, Okay. And again, we're working with the green system with newcomers, so we could run wild with this, but I think it's really important to keep things basic. Okay. Dictation. This is where we are going to, I'm going to pick a very simple word, phrase. So this, instead of, it's a 3-letter word, pig, right? I don't want to do horse. I can try that. Definitely not going to do turkey. That's 2 syllables. I might do sheep, right? I'll try duck, all right? So I will, the pig wakes up. The duck wakes up. Okay? That will be plenty. Most likely on the very first day, I'm going to have to say the word the twice, 3 times. And they're going to have to try to recall how to spell it. Now, what I have done is, especially supportive on day 1, allow students to find the word on the whiteboard, okay, if needed. Okay, so my first inclination was to make sure my whiteboard was erased, and then I realized those students really, really needed to find the word and copy it, right? Because they weren't sure of the spelling, or they didn't know how the sounds matched the letters. So in the end, I just deemed it actually supportive to leave the words on the whiteboard from all this stuff before, so that they could find the word that matches, what they're hearing, and then copy it. Okay. By the time I get to lesson 15 or 20, I am starting to erase the whiteboard from time to time. Okay. Then I close the books. We close the book. Let's see. Books are closed. All right. Then we do a close activity, and I am going to and this goes up on the whiteboard. Print on whiteboard. Okay. I don't really need to do it on the paper at this level because, all right, what I might do is I might show them a picture of the animal. Okay. And they have to say the horse wakes up. And then, because I don't want them copying it, I have them turn to a blank page, and we repeat the process, except this time I write a new sentence on the board. And then I might have them turn to a blank page again, and I would actually have a third one. So what's important is that they are not copying from the sentence before. Okay. Erase each time. Okay. That's really what I mean to say is erase each time. X. The other day I did it on a piece of paper instead of on the whiteboard to give them some practice writing, and erase from board. All right. And then we did a third one. The cow wakes up, right? And they fill in the blank here. All right. So what's important is that we're erasing the board at this stage because I really want to see if they can recall. Okay. Show picture of a pig, whatever. or another animal, a turkey. Now, what was it? Horse? Can't remember. Horse. Yeah. Okay. All right. So I basically have 3 closes that are going to be a part of this lesson. Okay. So the first one goes up on the whiteboard, and I show the picture, and they have to recall from memory how to say the word. And we do it as a group, and then they are going to write the word as best they can, and I'm not going to sweat the spelling. And then I'm going to erase the board, and I'm going to put up another sentence with a blank in a different location. This time I don't have to show a picture because the animal is there, all right? And they have to recall the word wakes, all right? And then I'm going to erase it from the board again. And fresh start, the cow wakes, and they have to recall the word up. All right? And that basically finishes off the main lesson. All right? So we're going to deal with this extending the language of the text and language of the schooling at another time, but just to kind of give you an idea of the direction I go, I might ask the students, what time do you wake up? It's an authentic question, right? Everybody wakes up, everybody eats, right? I point to the watch, I pantomime it. I say that Dr. Hall wakes up at 6:30, and then I point to you, and I say, what time? And I show my finger to my watch. What time do you wake up? And there's a whole lot of pantomime going on, and the child will struggle to say it, but at least we have now had an interaction, all right, with some kind of authentic interaction around waking up, okay? And it doesn't have to go any farther than that. All right. These book characteristics, again, we're going to deal with that at a later time, okay? So I need to make sure I save this. This is book 1. And then for book 2, let me open up my... Oops, that was book 1. Let me open up my green lesson template. So in lesson number 2, I'm going to have a new title. Oops. Lesson number 2, I'm going to have a new title. If it'll allow me to scroll up. All right. Lesson number 2, the book is called Frog Food. Okay. All right. Language, like all these things that I did yesterday, they're newcomers. So they're pretty much going to be the same, except that I'm going to be dealing with words from Frog Food here. I don't know at this second what language of schooling I'm going to be working on. But what I do know is that my phonics for today, because it's lesson 2, is going to be a phonics study of words from book number 1. So let me close that. Let me open up book number 1. First thing I always do is I am going to play count the syllables. All right. So count the syllables. I'm going to start with, so I have to actually teach them the concept of what a syllable is. All right. And we do a clap. And so pig, duck, horse, cow, right? And we clap it, or we tap it. We tap our tummy. We tap our chin, right? Anything that gives them some kind of physical feedback for counting the number of syllables in a word. Okay? Count the syllables, tap your tummy. Okay? Once they can count with 1, then I throw them a curveball and I say turkey. And they may need a little bit of support for that one, because now we're going on to two syllables, and that might be an issue. Okay. And I might also say wake up, okay, or wakes up. It's a phrasal verb, but I can still get them to count the syllables. So that's going to be a really important thing, I think, for phonological awareness. Everybody should be playing the count the syllable game. Very quickly students get very good at it, and it takes 15 seconds, right? But it's important to kind of go through this experience, especially if you have kids who struggle with basic phonological awareness. And I would also just advance that our brains are tuned to the number of syllables, so it actually helps us remember the spoken form of vocabulary words. Okay? So it's really important to help students kind of tune into syllables, because it'll be a strategy for memorization and writing and all that kind of stuff later. On the first day, or the first phonics lesson, I tend not to concentrate too much on vowels, if at all. So I'm just going to leave it blank. But I think definitely by, the next couple of lessons, I might start building that in. Identify the sound of the first sound of each target word. Okay? Then point to the letter. So I will say the word, and they have to repeat. I say the word, student repeats the first sound. So if I say wakes up, I want the students to go wah, wah, wah. If I say dog, I want the students to say duh, duh, duh. Right? And I will follow that up after they have said the sound, and after hearing it, then I will write the letter on the board. And then I will go to the text. Okay? And I write on the board. Okay? Write the letter on the board. In the text or on the board. Okay? I'm not going to do blends right now. Too soon? Too soon. Okay? Sight words. The is definitely going to be one. All right? And I might pick, turkey might not be a sight word, but dog will be, right? And whatever. The word and, actually even better, and. Okay. So I won't go into a phonological analysis of this, but we will just rehearse these words with like a flashcard, just to build them into their sight word vocabulary. Okay. Super segmental stuff we'll do on another day. Okay. So just to remind you, like, this is lesson 2. Okay. And what I did was I went back to book number 1 and I started building my phonics lesson. Okay. As part of the review. And then this other stuff that I did, right? The other stuff that I did here, maybe I would start doing that here, right? That's going to go there. Oops. Okay. And we're going to pantomime waking up. We are going to do TPR. I say wake up, you say wake up. You say cock-a-doodle-doo, I say cock-a-doodle-doo, right? That kind of stuff. These kinds of activities, all right? So this part of the lesson is looking back to book number 1. And now this part of the lesson is now looking to book number 2. So if book number 2 is what? Book number 2 is frog food, if I recall. Well, I'll tell you right now, the phrase I like is really helpful. So that's definitely going to be part of my new mappings. I like as a sentence stem, And then I can start asking people, what do they like on, do they like bugs on pancakes? Do they like bugs on popcorn? Right? And we're going to learn all of these words: popcorn, bread, bugs, soup. All that stuff is going to be put here. Corn, bread, bugs, soup. I like. Okay. And we'll go through the whole like pointing and picture stuff. All that stuff applies. All right, so I'm going to stop this movie right here. And hopefully you find this useful to give you some guidance on what to have prepared for next week.